Welcome back to my channel. I am Piyush Goyal and today we will see one more options to build RESTful service in TIBCO BusinessWorks 6 via Swagger 2.0, which is the ultimate tool for API development and documentation. Before we start, I want to thank all the wonderful viewers for your amazing comments and support. It truly inspires me to create the valuable content for you. If you are new here, remember to subscribe and turn on notification icon so you don't miss out any of our deep dives into the world of TIPCO and beyond. And if you have any questions or any TIPCO topic you would like me to cover in our future videos, please leave a comment. I love hearing from you guys. So let's get started. Swagger 2.0 is a powerful framework for designing, building, and documenting APIs. It provides developer with a standardized way to describe the structure and behavior of their APIs, making it easier to collaborate and maintain consistency across projects. The API server is the server hosting your API, and the base path specifies the root URL for all API endpoints. By defining these details in your Swagger specification, client can easily locate and interact with your APIs. Definitions are used to define the data models used in your API. This includes specifying the properties and relationship between different entities. Types, on the other hand, specifies the data types of parameter and response bodies, ensuring consistency and clarity in data exchange. Parameter describes the input accepted by API endpoints. These can include query parameters, path parameters, header parameters, and form parameters. By defining parameters in your Swagger specification, you provide client with information on how to interact with your APIs. Request body defines the structure of the data sent in the API request. It specifies the format and the content of data that clients needs to provide to the server when making API calls. By defining a clear request body schema, you ensure that clients send valid data to your API. The response body specifies the structure of the data returned in API response. It defines the format and content of the data that clients can expect to receive from the server. By defining a clear response body schema, you ensure that client can effectively process the data returned by your API. Swagger allows you to specify the HTTP status code written by your API operations along with a description of what each status code represents. This helps client understand the result of their API's call and handle error gracefully. I will walk you through the process of building a simple API using Swagger. We will define API endpoints, parameter, request, and response bodies, and then generate interactive documentation using Swagger UI. Let's get started. So as we are using the Swagger 2.0, so I will provide this Swagger version as 2.0. In the info part, I will give the title as Bike Store Product API. So in the description, I will give something which can elaborate my API. So this is the first version of our API. So I will give the version as 1.0.0. In these schemes, I will give HTTP and HTTPS for now. And so let's create our first endpoint, which is Bike Store V1 products. And let's create the get operation first. So what it will do, it will, retrieve the list of products from the bike store DB. So it consumes the payload will be of type JSON and it will return the payload which will be of type application JSON. So both consumes and produce will be application JSON. Then we will have the parameters. We will have three query parameters. The first one will be the page size, second one will be the page number, and third one will be the order by. Because there is no point, like suppose we have the 50,000 records in our database, so there is no point to retrieve all the database. So that's why pagination come into the picture. Whatever API is going to invoke this endpoint, so that API needs to provide this page size, page number, and order by. So let's rename the page size to page. It will be much more clearer. So let's switch back to the ER diagram and see what all we can return from the, products endpoint. So we can return the product ID, product name, brand name, and category name. I don't want to expose the brand ID and category ID because those are internal to the DB. So I don't want to expose those. So only the, brand name and category name I will expose. Then we have model year and then we have the price of that product. So whatever the listed price, then we have quantity, the number of stocks available in our inventory. So in the responses, we can have, types of responses, like when we have the successful response, then, we can return the actual, whatever the expected response. There can be some, technical error within the flow, 400 error, and then, our API can throw any 500 error. Those needs to be taken care in this API. So we will define one structure like whenever we are going to throw the 400 or 500 error, we will have a structure defined so that the consumer application can deal with it. So let's define the definitions for our this find product response and error response. So as we identified some fields from the ER diagram, so find product response is of type object in the response body. We will have two things. So first one will be the metadata and second one will be the items. So metadata is basically nothing. It is just the it will contains the paging information of that request. So whatever the paging information we calculate in the API, that we will, send back to the consumer application so that, they can, implement their own logic about how they wanted to show the records to the user or someone. And items will be of type array, and it will be of array of product details. So let's define the product details now. So let's define the product details schema. Okay, let's, define it at the, first definition. So I will bring it up. So it will be again of type object, and it will have, few parameters. So first parameter I will give as product, name. Okay, let's give product ID as well. That will be also part of response. And product ID will be of, will be of type number, and product name will be of type string. And then let's give brand name. Brand name will be of type string. Category name will be of type string as well. Model year will be of type number, and year will be of 4 digits. And then I will create one more, you know, response parameter as quantity, which will be of type integer. So quantity is nothing but it's the, number of stock we have for this product. So yeah, it will give me all the available, stocks which we have. So I will define this as number also. Then let's define the error response. It will be of type object, and it will contains two parameters. One will be the error code and second one will be the error message. So error code will be of type string and error message will be of type string as well. I think I forgot to mention the, parameter type. So we have to give a field in as query. So these are all the query parameters. And in the definition, it is not the parameters, it's the properties. My bad, guys. So in the definition, these are properties, not the parameters. So now let's define the metadata. Metadata, as I mentioned earlier also, it is nothing but the paging details. So let's define the one more method in the same endpoint. So let's define, post method. What this method do, it will, create the product on the bookstore DB. Okay, so let me copy it from above. So it consumes the same application JSON as payload and produces, application JSON as output. So we have to, define parameter as body to, to pass the request payload. And in the response, I will return the product ID. So yeah, from the create response also, I either the record got created in the DB or, there can be an internal error or there can be, technical error. Okay, I think I forgot to, provide the properties for the metadata. So the metadata will have the 4 5 property. The first property will be the retrieved at, which will be of type date time. It will populate the basically the current date when the record were fetched. And the second property will be the page, which will give us the current records present in the response. The third property will be the page number. It will tell us the, current page number from which the records were fetched. And then we have the items count. So item count is nothing but it will give the, total number of records present in the DB for the current search criteria. Now let's define the create product request. So I will be passing the product name and brand name and category name, and I will be passing the model year, which will be of type number, and then I will be passing the quantity. Quantity is nothing but the number of stock. So now let's define the create product response. So I want the product ID in the response when the product got created successfully in the DB. So I will, give one property as product ID, which will be of type string. And let's make this field as mandatory, because when the product got created in DB, so definitely a product got created and product ID was generated, so we want that product ID in this. And let's do one thing, make what all are mandatory and what all are optional, because that will also tell the consumer application what they have to send always. So also update our request and mention all the fields which are mandatory. So product name, brand name, category name, model year, these four are mandatory. Quantity can be optional, we just have created the product in our DB, but we don't have the quantity as of now. Later we can update the quantity via some put operation or something. Also in the find operation, let's make these query parameters like page and page number as required. And for order by, we have the default value as ID in ascending order. In the product detail definition, also give some required parameter as well. So the product ID will be mandatory, product name will be mandatory, and brand name, category name, model year, these 4 5 properties will be mandatory. Also in the metadata, let's make, some field as mandatory. So, retrieve at will be mandatory, and page number, and item count is also mandatory. If there is nothing found, then item count will be zero. So, yeah, let's make all as mandatory. There is a typo, yeah, that let's correct it. Let's validate now so that we don't, miss out something. Okay, let's create, one more endpoint, which will be bookstore v1 products and then product ID. So basically from this endpoint we will try to fetch or update the particular record. So let's implement the get operation first. So let's define the parameter. This we have this product ID as a path parameter. So let's define that parameter. And in the response, let's create the response. So response for 200, we will create one schema for get product response. For others, it will be like same schema will be used for 400 and 500. We want to just make our error handling consistent. So get product response will be of type object, and it will have the one property which will be product details. So we have already created one product detail definition, so it will, refer that. I think we should add, one more error on this, which is 404, when, the whatever product we are trying to fetch, if that is not, found in the DB, so it will throw the 404 exception. So the path parameter is a required one. So I will mark it as, required as true.